Hello again, everyone. As always, this is Arak Gabar, Seeking the Truth. So my video today is going to be about the so-called Columbus Day. Many countries around the world officially celebrate the anniversary of Christopher Columbus in the Americas as a holiday. Christopher Columbus is recognized as the great explorer who founded the first permanent European settlement in the so-called New World during the time of the Renaissance. The arrival of Columbus in 1492 marks the beginning of so-called American history. But before the Europeans imposed their own writing system, there were various systems of writing of written language already in use in the Americas. Just because the histories weren't written in the European-based alphabet doesn't mean it wasn't recorded at all. Writing has never been limited to the modern English alphabet. Examples of writing that predate the English alphabet are cuneiform, Egyptian pictographs, Mayan hieroglyphics, the many varied Asian writing symbols, as well as Aramaic, Hebrew, Greek, and various forms of African writing systems. Christopher Columbus wasn't even the first European to travel to America. The Viking Leif Erikson founded a Norse village in Newfoundland about 500 years earlier. But yet our government-issued history books tell us that Christopher Columbus discovered America in 1492. The dictionary says to discover means to learn something unknown. So the tens of millions of indigenous people who already lived in America prior to Columbus's discovery are overlooked when it comes to this fact. It was on August 3rd, 1492, that the fleet of 3 ships, the Nina, Pinta, and Santa Maria, set forth from Spain. The first sight of land was on October 12, 1492. They landed on San Salvador in the Bahamas. But because Christopher Columbus mistakenly believed that he landed on the continent of India, he called the indigenous people living there Indians. Eventually, that name was applied to almost all indigenous non-European inhabitants of North and South America. The actual people that Columbus discovered on the islands were friendly, peaceful people called the Taino and Arawaks. Writing in his diary, Columbus said that they were a handsome, smart, and kind people. He noted that the gentle Arawaks were remarkable for their hospitality. They offered to share with anyone whenever anyone asked for something, and they never said no. He said the Arawaks had no weapons. Their society neither had criminals, prisons, nor prisoners. They were so kind-hearted that Columbus noted in his diary that on the day the Santa Maria was shipwrecked, the Arawaks labored for hours to save his crew and his cargo, and that the native people were so honest that not one thing was missing or stolen. After the success of Columbus's first voyage, he had little trouble convincing King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella of Spain to do a follow-up immediately with his second voyage. Unlike the exploratory first voyage, the second voyage was a massive colonization effort. On September 25th of 1493, Christopher Columbus set sail from Spain again with 17 ships and almost 1,500 men. The second voyage brought European livestock like horses, sheep, and cattle to America for the first time. Then, on November 19, 1493, Christopher Columbus discovered the island of Bordeaux. He found this island populated by more Taino and Arawaks. Natives born to this island were also known as Boricuas. The Taino greeted Columbus and even showed him gold nuggets in the river and told him to take all that he wanted. One of Columbus's officers, Juan Ponce de Leon, thus then called this island the Port of Riches. That is where we today get the name of Puerto Rico. This then quickly became Spain's most important military outpost in the Caribbean. Columbus was so impressed with the hard work of these gentle islanders that he immediately seized their land and enslaved them to work in his brutal gold mines. Within only 2 years, half of the population of the original half the population of the original natives on the island were dead or enslaved. On his second trip to the New World, Columbus also brought cannons and attack dogs. If a native resisted slavery, he would cut off their nose or an ear. If slaves tried to escape, Columbus had them buried alive. Other times, he sent dogs to hunt them down, and the dogs would tear off the arms and legs of screaming natives. while they were still alive. If the Spaniards ran short of meat to feed their dogs, Arawak babies were killed for dog food. Columbus and his men also used Taino women as sex slaves. It was a common reward for Columbus to present local Taino women as gifts for men to rape. As he began exporting Taino as slaves to other parts of the world, the sex slave trade became an important and major business for Columbus and the Spaniards. Eventually, life for the Taino became so unbearable that Pedro de Cordoba wrote a letter to King Ferdinand in 1517. In his letter wrote, "As a result of the suffering and hard labor they endured, the Indians choose and have chosen suicide. Occasionally, 100 have committed mass suicide. The women, exhausted by labor, have shunned conception and childbirth. Many, when pregnant, have taken something to abort and have aborted. Others, after delivery, have killed their children with their own hands, so as not to leave them in such oppressive slavery." So when Columbus arrived on the Caribbean islands in 1492, there were an estimated 8 million people living on the surrounding islands. By 1496, the population had been cut nearly in half. Nearly 4 million natives had died in less than 4 years. To celebrate Columbus Day is to celebrate the manipulation, oppression, slavery, and near genocide of a nation of people. Now I know that some may be asking, how does any of this pertain to the truth that's in the Bible, since that's what all my videos are surrounded by. It's because the so-called Puerto Ricans are one of the 12 tribes of Israel. Taino and Arawak were primarily originally from the tribe of Ephraim, and a lot of what happened to them was all part of biblical prophecy. I have shared other videos that go into this in more detail, but I'll just go over a few points. In the book of Genesis, chapter 49, verse 22, it reads, "Joseph is a fruitful bough, even a fruitful bough by a well, whose branches run over the wall." Okay, so here in this verse, the blessings of Joseph went down to his sons Ephraim and Manasseh. A bough is a tree. A bough is a tree. So when the scriptures say even a fruitful bough by a well, it's showing us a comparison of how a tree that is planted near water is fruitful. The same way that the tribes of Ephraim and Manasseh would be located near water, like on an island, and be very fruitful. The so-called Puerto Ricans are fruitful by having many children within and having very large families. And when the scripture says, "whose branches run over the wall," this is the same way the branches run over a wall that divides them from other trees and branches so that they don't mix with them. Is the same way that the daughters of Ephraim went over the wall of racial division to mix with the Spanish by marrying the Spaniards. The Spanish built a fort in Puerto Rico and surrounded it by what's called El Moro, meaning the wall. This was meant to keep the other invading Europeans from stealing Boricua slaves and taking Puerto Rico. The daughters of Boricua had children with the Spanish conquistadors. But what does the Most High say would happen to these children? In Genesis chapter 49, verse 23, "The archers have sorely grieved him, and shot at him, and hated him." The archers in this verse are talking about the conquistadors of Spain. They sorely grieved Ephraim by having the Boricua work in gold mines and sugar cane fields under very hard and strenuous conditions, and shot at them. When Columbus and Ponce de Leon came in 1493 to subdue Ephraim, many Boricua were shot because they protested the working and not being slaves. There is much more evidence that can be researched that link Puerto Ricans to the tribe of Ephraim throughout historical and scholarly writings, as well as in the Bible. So I encourage you to do your own studies outside of what has been taught through our mainstream government-issued textbooks in so-called American history. You'll find that Columbus Day is not a day to be celebrated, but in fact, it is another reminder of the display of hatred that Esau had for his brother Jacob and the children of Israel. I want to thank you again for watching. Please subscribe to my page and my videos, and remember to always seek the truth.